I love you for you, Sophia, not because you're a Williams. Andrew's warm words still echoed in Sophia's ears, a sweet melody she had clung to in order to survive the past 3 days of the funeral. It was her last fortress, but that fortress had just crumbled with a single whisper. To put it bluntly, he was just a lucky gold digger. The words, spoken by a familiar family acquaintance, made Sophia freeze. She was hiding behind a large pillar, and the glass in her hand began to tremble. Lucky he died when he did, another voice chimed in, her cackle grotesque. Now, he gets to be the great love of the Williams heiress's life, instead of the debtor who was about to be exposed. Look at the poor girl, still lost in that perfect little charade. Acharadi. That one word made every beautiful memory Sophia had suddenly feel suspect. The first kiss in the rain, the late-night talks, the promise of a simple future. Was it all just part of his plan? The pain of losing the man she loved had not yet faded, and now it was being replaced by something far worse. Doubt. Sophia scanned the room. The elegant guests weren't looking at her with sympathy. They looked at her as if she were a prize, a trophy that had just slipped from someone else's grasp. In their eyes, she wasn't a woman enduring a loss. She was just a name attached to a massive fortune. And Andrew, her love, was just a lucky player in this game of money. Her throat tightened. This wasn't a memorial service. It felt like a trial where her love was being put on display and mocked. For the first time in her life, Sophia hated who she was. Her wealth didn't bring her genuine love. It only attracted actors and opportunists. A question burned in her mind, sharp and painful. If she weren't Sophia Williams, would Andrew have loved her? Would anyone in this world ever truly love her for herself? Unwilling to hear another word, Sophia quietly set her glass down. She turned and walked into the shadows, leaving behind the glittering world that had just killed her heart for a second time. The darkness of the long hallway swallowed Sophia whole, but it couldn't silence the question that was screaming in her mind. If she wasn't Sophia Williams, would anyone ever truly love her? That question followed her into her room, haunted her when she slammed the door, and tormented her through the long nights that followed. Sleep became a luxury. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Andrew's smile, but it was accompanied by the sneering laughter of those guests. Love and betrayal, truth and lies, all twisted together, suffocating her. Her lavish bedroom now felt like nothing less than a prison. She looked at everything around her, the designer dress draped over a chair, the sparkling jewelry box, the glamorous view of the New York skyline outside her window. She realized that as long as she was here, in this world, she would never find the answer. She would forever be the prize in everyone else's eyes. A powerful resolve ignited within her, overpowering the pain and despair. She had to escape. She had to find the truth for herself. Grabbing her phone, her hand still trembling slightly, she found the one name she trusted completely. The ringing echoed in the dead of night. "Hello?" Emily Carter's sleepy voice came through the line. "Soph, what's wrong? It's almost 3 in the morning." Sophia took a deep breath. Her voice was quiet but heavy with the weight of a life-altering decision. "Emily, I need your help." Hearing the strange tone in her friend's voice, Emily was instantly awake. "Of course. Are you okay? Do you need me to come over right now?" "I'm okay," Sophia replied, "but I don't want to be me anymore." There was a short pause. "What do you mean by that, Soph? Don't scare me." Sophia stared at her own reflection in the mirror, as if speaking directly to the shell she was about to shed. "I want to disappear, Emily. I want Sophia Williams to disappear. Can you help me become someone else entirely?" That very night, Emily Carter arrived. She didn't use the main entrance, but slipped in through the service door, carrying 2 large suitcases that contained not designer clothes, but the tools of her trade. Seeing her friend's exhausted state but the fierce determination in her eyes, Emily didn't ask a single question about why. She just nodded. "All right, if you've made up your mind, we're going to do this right," Emily said, her voice firm. "First things first, Sophia Williams has to die, visually, at least." Sophia's luxurious walk-in closet was instantly transformed into a secret salon and makeup studio. Emily picked up a pair of scissors. "Say goodbye to your $500 blowouts," she said, half joking. Snip. Locks of shiny, meticulously cared-for brown hair fell to the marble floor. Emily didn't give her an ugly haircut, but an unremarkable one, with a few strands intentionally cut to look slightly choppy. She showed Sophia how to run her fingers through it to give it a naturally messy look. Next, the skin, Emily said, opening her makeup kit. Your skin is too perfect. It screams, I have a private esthetician. We need to make it more normal. She didn't make Sophia ugly, but simply stripped away her radiance. A thin layer of foundation to make her skin look a bit duller, a few faint, fake freckles across her cheeks, and a touch of shadow under her eyes to create the tired look of someone who actually had to worry about life. Sophia stared at her reflection. The woman in the mirror was still her, and yet she wasn't. Her sharp beauty had been muted, her elegance replaced by a simple, almost weathered look. She looked like any other ordinary person she used to pass on the street. For the first time, she felt like she could blend into a crowd. What about a new name? Emily asked while cleaning up. Sophia thought for a moment. She wanted something familiar but different. Sophie, she said, and the last name, Miller. Sophie Miller. It sounded so normal. It was perfect. The plan was mapped out in detail. Sophia secretly sold a pair of diamond earrings, the piece of jewelry, with the least sentimental value for enough cash to last for months. Emily helped her buy an old, prepaid burner phone, registered under a fake name. The destination chosen was a small coastal town in Maine, far enough from New York that no one would recognize her, and quiet enough for her to start over. Finally, the clothes. Sophia's entire designer wardrobe was left behind. Emily took her to a thrift store, where Sophia awkwardly picked out faded jeans, a few simple sweaters, and a generic, no-brand windbreaker. As she put on the unfamiliar clothes, Sophia felt a strange sensation. They weren't soft like silk or cashmere, but they gave her a sense of freedom she had never known. A few days later, early one morning, a woman with messy hair, a muted complexion, and plain clothes carried an old suitcase out of a modest apartment building in the suburbs. She had no bodyguards, no luxury car waiting. She walked to the bus stop, blending in with the stream of people rushing to work. As the bus headed north towards Maine, Sophie Miller looked out the window and watched the Williams Tower shrink in the distance until it disappeared. She didn't feel a sense of loss. She only felt that, finally, she was beginning to live. The coastal town in Maine seemed quiet on the surface, but Sophie quickly realized it was a place where everyone watched and whispered about everyone else. The moment Sophie walked into the town's only coffee shop, all conversation came to a dead stop. Everyone turned to look at her, their eyes scanning everything from her unkempt hair to her old sneakers. She awkwardly ordered a coffee and found the most secluded corner table, but she could still hear the whispers behind her back. A stranger. Looks like she's from the city, probably running from debt or something. Sophie felt like she was under a microscope. The grocery store was no different. The shopkeeper had been cheerful with the customer ahead of her, but her demeanor turned cold the moment it was Sophie's turn. Her eyes scanned Sophie from head to toe before landing on her basket, which held only a few cheap items. "New in town?" she asked. Her tone clipped. "Yes," Sophie replied quietly. "This isn't the city," the woman stated, the sentence hanging in the air. Sophie understood the unspoken message. You don't belong here. No one spoke to her openly. Friendly smiles seemed to vanish the moment she approached. It turned out that whether she was rich or ordinary, she would always be judged. The loneliness here was even worse than in New York, because here, she was completely alone. The only place she felt any peace was the old bookstore where she worked, surrounded by the silence of the pages. Until one day, Daniel Miller walked in. He was tall and had a sturdy build, wearing a simple t-shirt. What was different was that he didn't stare at her. He looked at the bookshelves with genuine interest. When he approached the counter, he smiled a completely natural smile. "Hello," he said, his voice deep and warm. "I'm looking for a book on steam engines. Could you help me?" He was the first person in weeks to speak to her so normally. Sophie was a little taken aback. "Oh, yes, of course. Let me look." While she searched for the book, he told her he was restoring a vintage car and wanted to understand its mechanics better. When Sophie handed him the book, he thanked her politely. "Thanks. I'm Daniel," he introduced himself. "I'm Sophie," she replied. "Sophie," he repeated her name in a friendly way. "It's nice to meet you." From that day on, Daniel would stop by from time to time. He never asked prying questions like where she came from or why she was there. He just talked about books, his work, or the kids he was teaching to fix cars. To Daniel, she was simply Sophie, the girl who worked at the bookstore. His ordinary kindness was the most extraordinary thing she had received there. Slowly, it began to put her at ease. One quiet afternoon, Sophie was smiling to herself while dusting the spines of old books. For the first time in weeks, she felt a real sense of peace. The town had slowly gotten used to her presence, and the prying eyes had lessened, especially after Daniel had stopped by a few times and chatted openly with her in front of others. Suddenly, the bell on the shop door jingled frantically, and Daniel rushed in. His usual gentle expression was gone, replaced by a scowl of worry and anger. "Sophie," he called out, his voice urgent, "you need to see this." Sophie was surprised by his demeanor. "What is it, Daniel? You look." "Just watch," he interrupted, holding his phone out in front of her. A video was playing on the screen. Sophie squinted. She saw a familiar-looking woman fumbling amidst a messy pile of fallen books. Then she realized it was her, from a few days ago. The video was shot from a malicious angle, focusing on her flustered face and plain clothes. A man's voice could be heard, dripping with mockery. "Look at this. What a disaster. Let me capture this moment for everyone to see." The memory of that day flooded back. The expensive sports car, the guy with the slick hair and smug smile, Lucas Evans. She remembered the feeling of being frozen to the spot as he pointed his phone at her instead of helping. At the time, she had just brushed it off as a rude gesture and forgotten about it. But now, she saw that video was posted on a social media page. The caption below it read, "Visited the local bookstore and met the clumsiest girl of the year. Number disaster, number epic fail, number stay home." The post showed tens of thousands of views and hundreds of comments filled with laughing emojis. The color drained from Sophie's face. It felt like a bucket of ice water had been dumped on her. "That guy's a real bastard," Daniel said through gritted teeth, the anger in his voice undisguised. "One of the kids in my class showed it to me. They're all passing it around. I'm sorry, Sophie. I didn't want you to have to see this, but I thought you should know." Sophie wasn't listening anymore. Her ears were ringing. She had run away from the judgmental world of New York, turning herself into a nobody. But even as a nobody, she couldn't escape being made into a joke, just because she was clumsy, just because she wore old clothes. The small, peaceful world she had painstakingly built in this bookstore had been violated. She looked up at Daniel, her eyes filled with hurt. "It turns out," she said softly, her voice cracking, "you can't run away, no matter where you go." The storm from Lucas's video caused Sophie to withdraw into herself. She went to the bookstore, worked in silence, and returned to her small apartment, avoiding everyone's gaze. But one thing was different. Daniel didn't avoid her. On the contrary, he stopped by even more often. He never mentioned the video, but he would bring her a hot coffee in the morning or leave a book he thought she'd like on the counter. He treated her as if nothing had happened, and that sense of normalcy was the most effective medicine. A few days later, just as the gossip was starting to die down, another storm brewed on local social media. This time, the star was again Lucas Evans. He posted a series of photos and videos of himself and his friends delivering a few cases of mineral water branded with his personal logo to the town's youth center. He posed for pictures with the kids, beaming for the camera, and finished with a long, sappy post about the importance of giving back. The post was flooded with hashtags like #doinggood, #inspiration, and #charity. Sophie scrolled through the images with an indescribable feeling. Everything looked so polished, so perfect, but it also felt so fake. That evening, on her way home, she passed by Daniel's auto repair shop. It was late, but the lights were still on. Curious, she peeked through a crack in the door. Daniel wasn't alone. He was leaning over an old car engine, and next to him was a teenager. Sophie recognized him as one of the boys who had pointed and snickered at her after seeing Lucas's video. But right now, the boy didn't look cocky at all. He was listening intently as Daniel patiently explained each part, his hands greasy as he carefully tightened a bolt. There were no cameras, no audience, no flashy hashtags, just a man quietly spending his time to teach a kid a trade, giving him a direction in life and keeping him out of trouble. The contrast between the two images struck Sophie powerfully. Lucas used a few bottles of water to polish his image in front of thousands. Daniel was silently changing one person's life. Yet the world celebrated people like Lucas, those who knew how to turn kindness into a performance. Meanwhile, genuinely good people like Daniel went unnoticed. The sadness in Sophie's heart slowly turned into a cold anger. She was tired of running. She was sick of a world where a person's worth was measured by their appearance and the number of likes they got online. She realized that to expose someone who lived by his image like Lucas, she couldn't use the weak persona of Sophie Miller. She had to use the weapons of the very world she had abandoned. A plan began to form in her mind, clear and bold. That night, Sophie opened her old suitcase and pulled out an expensive smartphone she had hidden at the bottom. It was her only remaining link to her old life. She dialed a number she knew by heart. "Hello," a professional voice answered on the other end. It was her father's assistant. Sophie's voice was no longer that of the timid bookstore girl. It was cold, decisive, and powerful, the voice of Sophia Williams. "I want to organize a charity art auction," she commanded, "at the Williams Gallery in New York. Have everything arranged in 2 weeks. The assistant was momentarily flustered by her sudden return, but immediately complied. "Yes, miss. And one more thing," Sophia added, her eyes narrowing. "Make sure all the major media outlets and social media influencers get an invitation. Specifically, send a formal, personal invitation to a man named Lucas Evans. Tell him it's the can't-miss high society event of the year." The charity auction was as glamorous and lavish as Sophia had planned. Crystal chandeliers cast a glittering light onto the high society guests, and the flashbulbs of the media cameras went off non-stop. In the midst of it all, Lucas Evans was soaking up his moment, a champagne flute in hand, constantly live-streaming to show off to his thousands of followers. And then Sophie Miller walked in. She looked exactly as she did in the small coastal town, her hair unstyled, her face nearly bare of makeup, wearing a simple blue dress. Her arrival was like a discordant note in a symphony of extravagance, immediately drawing every eye. Lucas, in the middle of his live stream, recognized the clumsy girl from his viral video. A smirk spread across his face. This was a godsend, another chance to create a spectacle. He headed straight for her, his phone held high. "Well, look what we have here," Lucas said loudly, his voice dripping with sarcasm for everyone around to hear. He pointed his camera directly at Sophie's stunned face. "Hey there, you lost? Or did you think this was a charity event for the homeless?" He burst out laughing, and a few people around him chuckled along. In front of dozens of cameras and hundreds of pairs of eyes, Lucas leaned close to his phone. "Who shows up to a black tie event dressed like this?" he said, as if delivering a profound truth to his followers. "This is exactly why the poor stay poor. They don't even know how to dress for the occasion." Every word was like a slap in the face to Sophie. She felt suffocated, humiliated, unable to bear it for another second. She turned and practically fled the ballroom, leaving behind Lucas's jeering laughter and the gaze of a world she once belonged to. At that same moment, in a rustic auto repair shop in Maine, Daniel was wiping down his tools when one of the kids from his class ran in, excitedly holding up a phone. "Hey Daniel, check it out. That Lucas Evans guy is live streaming from some huge event in New York." Daniel didn't care, but when he glanced at the screen, he froze. Amidst the glittering crowd, he recognized Sophie. He saw how lost and hurt she looked. And then he heard Lucas's cruel insults and watched as the color drained from Sophie's face before she turned and ran. A surge of fury rose in Daniel's chest, but it was quickly overtaken by a much greater sense of worry. He knew Sophie was alone in that strange, unforgiving city. She had no one. Without a second of hesitation, Daniel threw the rag on the table, grabbing his jacket and keys. "Where are you going?" the kid asked, surprised. "New York," Daniel replied, his voice firm and urgent. His pickup truck tore out into the night, beginning a journey of hundreds of miles. He had no specific plan, no idea how he would find her. He just knew he had to get there. He had to be there for her. Backstage, Sophia wasn't crying. The tears were gone, replaced by an ice-cold calm. Her rage had been compressed into a sharp, focused strength. She looked in the dressing room mirror, but no longer saw the timid Sophie Miller. She saw Sophia Williams, the heir to an empire, and she knew exactly what she had to do. Emily was already there waiting, a stunning evening gown and her professional kit at the ready. An hour later, the main doors to the ballroom opened once again. A hush fell over the room. Every whisper, every clink of a glass, went silent. Standing in the doorway was no longer the simple bookstore girl, but a completely different woman. Sophia Williams stood there in an exquisite, form-fitting crimson gown. Her hair was swept up in an elegant updo, revealing a graceful neck and glittering diamond earrings. Professional makeup highlighted her determined eyes and bold red lips. She wasn't just beautiful. She radiated an aura of power that commanded everyone's attention. The room was stunned. The media went into a frenzy of camera flashes. Lucas Evans, who just moments ago had been the center of attention, was instantly forgotten. He, like everyone else, was gaping at the woman who had just appeared. He had absolutely no idea it was the clumsy girl he had just humiliated. To him, she was a goddess, the ultimate prize. He immediately ended his old live stream and started a new one. He had to capture this. "Ladies and gentlemen," he whispered dramatically into his phone, "I think I've just met the woman of my dreams." He quickly made his way toward Sophia, pushing through the crowd with the most sycophantic smile he could muster. "Good evening," he said, his voice smooth as honey. "I'm Lucas Evans. It's an honor to meet someone as stunning as you. The stars must have aligned for us to meet." Sophia just smiled enigmatically, saying nothing. Her silence only made Lucas more confident that he had impressed her. He held his phone higher, boasting to his followers, "You all see this? The goddess of the gala. I think I'm about to win the heiress's heart." Just then, Sophia gently brushed his hand away. She walked straight to the main stage and took the microphone from the bewildered host. The entire room was dead silent. "Welcome, everyone," her voice rang out, clear and steely. "Thank you for coming to this charity auction tonight. Before we begin, I'd like to show you all a short video, a story about kindness and truth." With that, she gave a signal. The large screen behind the stage, which had been displaying the charity's logo, went dark. Then, it lit up with a familiar video. It was the secretly recorded phone footage of a clumsy girl in old clothes, fumbling amidst a pile of fallen books. Then, Lucas Evans's voice boomed through the ballroom's sound system, loud and clear for every word to be heard. "Who shows up to a black tie event dressed like this? This is exactly why the poor stay poor." The silence in the room shattered. Everyone turned to stare at Lucas with expressions of shock and disgust. Lucas stood frozen to the spot, his face turning from red to ghostly white. He looked at the girl on the screen, then at the magnificent woman on the stage. His brain finally connected the two images. His phone slipped from his hand and clattered to the floor. Thousands of people watching his live stream had just witnessed the entire truth unfold. Sophia raised the microphone again, her voice cutting through the chaos like ice. "That girl in the video was me," she declared. "And the man who just used sweet words to approach me is the same man who humiliated me when he thought I was poor and worthless." The room erupted. The media swarmed Lucas like a pack of wolves. A barrage of questions was hurled at him, cameras flashing relentlessly in his stunned face. In a matter of minutes, the reputation Lucas had painstakingly built on a foundation of lies crumbled completely before the eyes of millions. While the ballroom was in an uproar over the shocking scandal, Sophia quietly slipped off the stage and into the calm of the backstage area. The show was over. She had won, but she felt no joy, only a strange emptiness. She leaned against the cold wall and closed her eyes. She had exposed a fraud, but the biggest question in her heart remained unanswered. Just then, a familiar voice cut through the silence. "Sophie." She opened her eyes. Daniel was standing at the end of the hall, his jacket still damp from the night air, his breath coming in short gasps from running. He had driven hundreds of miles to be here. He looked at her, not with awe at her glamorous appearance, but with the same familiar, worried expression he always had for the bookstore girl in Maine. Without a word, he strode toward her and pulled her into a tight hug. His embrace was warm, solid, and smelled faintly of motor oil, a world away from the perfume and phoniness outside. It felt like a safe harbor. "I saw everything," he whispered, his voice hoarse. "I'm sorry. I didn't get here sooner." Sophia shook her head, feeling a sting behind her eyes. "How are you even here?" Daniel pulled back, his hand still resting firmly on her shoulders. He looked directly into her eyes, his gaze so sincere it was impossible to doubt. I don't care if you're Sophia Williams or Sophie Miller. I don't care if you're wearing an evening gown or old jeans. I just know that the girl I met in the bookstore is kind, smart, and strong, and I was worried about her." He paused, then said with all his courage, "And I love her. I love the real you, Sophie. I love the real you." Those words, the very ones Sophia had been so desperate to hear, had finally come from the most unexpected person. The tears she had held back for so long finally streamed down her face, but these were tears of happiness and release. She had found her answer. True love really did exist. In the days that followed, the fallout from the auction spread like wildfire. Lucas Evans vanished from social media, but another figure unexpectedly came into the spotlight. While reporting on the event, a few journalists got curious about the town in Maine and uncovered Daniel's quiet deeds. The story of the devoted mechanic who ran a free vocational class for teenagers, the man who didn't hesitate to drive through the night for a girl, became an inspiring bright spot amidst the sensational scandal. A week later, Daniel received an email from an international automotive corporation. They had read the story about him. They were impressed not only by his technical skills but by his character and integrity. They offered him the position of lead engineer for their new community outreach initiative. Success had come to him not through showing off, but through the authentic values he lived by. Sophia and Daniel went public with their relationship. They didn't hide from the media anymore. During their first interview, when a reporter asked Daniel how it felt to be in love with one of the richest women in the world, he smiled and gave Sophia's hand a firm squeeze. He looked directly into the camera and said with heartfelt sincerity, "I'm not in love with the billionaire Heiress. I fell in love with Sophie, the girl who used to sit and read in a small bookstore." That sentence immediately went viral. It was shared millions of times on social media, becoming a viral quote about true love. It wasn't just a declaration of Daniel's love. It was the perfect capstone to Sophia's journey. She had given up everything to find something priceless, and in the end, she had gained it all.